Hey guys, Kevin for American Crime Story, The People versus O.J Simpson, Episode 6, Marcia, and oh my god, guys, what an episode. Yes, I am still watching the show. I know I am 3 weeks behind. Like Vinyl, I'm going to try to catch up tonight, and hopefully I can do that and watch The Walking Dead. Hopefully I can do both of those things, but obviously I was really looking forward to this episode. You guys know how much I love this show, and I didn't know if they'd be able to top the race car. The race car was just such an intense episode that was really just, really showing how big this case is becoming and how it's not just some murder case anymore. It's a lot more than that, how it's affecting everyone. And this episode essentially was like that, but it was focused in Marcia's perspective. And I don't know if they necessarily topped the race car, but they got pretty damn close because this was another amazing episode and probably tied with race card for the best episode of this season. I mean, this episode was just incredible. I absolutely love the way this episode was done. Amazing stuff overall. And the way that, just the way this episode was done, I absolutely loved. And Sarah Paulson especially. I've never seen Sarah Paulson act the hell out of something like she does here. I mean, I know she could act, I really did. But she is such a great actress, and she really was amazing in this. But let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to get into. And like I said, it really was all about Marcia, which I loved. Even though there were other things going on, all of it really did focus on Marcia and how she reacted to things, and I love that. So Marcia's in divorce court and is annoyed that her ex-husband Gordon seems to be winning, and right away we see the problem that she's dealing with. I mean, even in divorce court, she is being someone else is dominating her, and the judge reminds her she's not Lance Ito, and she needs to stop speaking out of protocol because this isn't a trial, and Marcia needs to understand that she is not the lawyer here. She is, in fact, in divorce court, and this is not like, the O.J. Simpson trial. So Marcia gets out of court, heads to the courtroom where there's a long line. She cuts in front of everyone and is ran through a metal detector, lets them know that she is very late, then heads to the courtroom. She apologizes and Darden asks if she's okay, but she gestures for him not to worry about it and that there's other things to deal with. And I love Darden and Marcia's relationship here because you think that they might go in a romantic direction, and they really don't. I think that Darden might have a crush on Marcia, but it's clear that they're trying to keep things strictly platonic because they don't know what'll happen to them. They don't know if this is really going to work out, and I like that. I don't think we need to have a romantic, romance, and especially with a Ryan Murphy show, I especially thought he'd do that. And of course, this isn't a Ryan Murphy show, but he did direct this episode, and I was thinking, oh, is he really going to get these two possibly together? And that's not what they do. We'll get into what he does do, though, but basically Darden's on the stand and then questions Nicole's sister, Denise, who we do meet Denise in this episode, played by Jordana Brewster, who I thought did a very good job, and he talks about what Simpson did after the toast with the tequila, and Denise says that Simpson grabbed Nicole's crotch, said to her that this is where babies come from and that it belongs to him, and Nicole acted like it was normal and used it to that kind of treatment, and she didn't really act like there was anything wrong here, and Shapiro says it calls for speculation, but is overruled by Lance, and he doesn't get a say here. I mean, they have her on the spot, and Denise is crying. Darden asks if Simpson was angry when he said what he did, and she says that he wasn't. It's just the kind of person that Simpson was. He wanted everyone to know that Nicole was his property only. Simpson wonders what this has to do with anything, because, he doesn't think this has to do with what happened, and Shapiro says he can stop it, and Cochran says it's too much since Denise is crying on cue. They feel it, and it's backfiring, and it's clear that this is staged. They think that it's staged. They don't think this is real. They think that they told Denise to cry, and Darden asks if she's okay. She says it's just so hard, and Lance says court will resume at Monday at 9, and that's a line that we hear a lot in this episode. A lot of this, we will now stand in recess. That is something that we hear throughout this entire episode, and we'll get into that. So Marcia praises Darden for doing what he did. Darden tells Cochran what the jury just heard will sit them all weekend, and Cochran says he hopes so, and you can tell that things are still very bad between Darden and Cochran. They're trying to be civil to each other, but it's just not easy to do. I mean, we know how crazy things got, we know how rough things became, and we know because of this that Darden and Cochran are not at all on good terms, and just that brief thing shows that, but the episode's not focused on Darden, it's focused on Marcia, and I like that the episode kept a focus on her. The last episode focused on Darden and Cochran very, very well this episode kind of did that with Marcia, and I really enjoyed that. So Marcia goes home, sees footage about the trial, and this is when things get very interesting, because it already shows what kind of episode this is going to be and what we're really dealing with here, because Marcia's not just dealing with her ex-husband, she's not just dealing with this trial, she's also dealing with how people perceive her, and that's very much how it is in this episode. In fact, I might have told you guys this before, my mom watches a few episodes of this show. I don't know if she's watching it now, but my mom has said straight out she's not a fan of Marcia Clark, and this episode kind of shows why people perceived her this way. way. And Marcia goes home, sees footage after the trial, Denise crying, but then hears the newscaster talking about her and the clothing she wears and how she has no style, and even about her hair a little bit, which is obviously has nothing to do with the case, but it's clear that people are so invested in this case that it's, they're talking about their hair and clothing and their sexual, attraction, things like that. And while that's not a huge thing, I mean, this is the media we're talking about. The media will do anything to get viewers talking. That's clear. That's what this is about. It has nothing to do with progression of the trial. It's all about get viewers talking. It's all about starting a discussion, and that's really what they're trying to do here. And basically, Travis comes in, says he knows she was home because he could smell smoke, and she asks what he's doing up, and he tells her about his school day and asks if she wants to give him a hug, and she says there's nothing more she'd want. He tells her smoking is gross, and she agrees, and we know she's not going to stop, but she knows that smoking's wrong, which I thought was a very interesting scene. It's a very small detail, but I like that she said, that she knew that smoking was wrong, and even though she knows that, she can't quit because she's just that addicted. And that's kind of how it is. When you're addicted to something like smoking, you don't stop even though you know it's wrong. You don't really want to be smoking. That's kind of Marcia's situation. She doesn't want to smoke, but she does because she can't not. It's just, she smokes so much that she's addicted pretty much. So basically, she says that there's nothing more she wants. Oh, I just read this. So then we get a great scene. She then looks in the mirror at her hair, which is one of the things the newscaster was talking about. And she's not really, I think, questioning her hair, but I think she's also kind of thinking about it. Like, it wasn't a huge deal before, but now that people are talking about it, she's kind of wondering, is there something wrong with my hair? Should I change it? Things like that. And it's something that I don't think Marcia's ever really thought about before. Maybe she's thought about it in the back of her mind, but she's never really thought about it in extensive detail the way she does in this episode. I mean, every little thing that is possibly wrong with Marcia, she makes a huge deal, and you definitely see that here, and I thought it was very interesting. And like I said, Sarah Paulson just killed it, starting with that scene. And that's the thing that she did so well. Not just the emotional scenes, but just little things like her checking her hair or her knowing that smoking is bad. She just has this character down perfectly. She's perfectly embodied this character, and that's the thing I was worried about when Sarah Paulson was first cast, because so far, Sarah Paulson's characters have been virtually all the same, and this character is nothing like that, and that's something I absolutely love with American Crime Stories, that it got her to play a much different character than she usually plays, and I really enjoyed that. This isn't a character that is a hero or a villain. It's a character that we're supposed to sympathize with, but she's not really the hero or the villain of the story. There is no heroes or villains in American Crime Story. I've said this before. The show is not about heroes or villains. It's not about do you agree with them or not. It's showing how all these people felt. It's showing how the trial affected them, and it's showing that these are real people, and I really enjoyed that. So that's something I think this episode just got down perfectly. And it never felt like they were trying to glorify Marcia or make her seem like this great person. They're just showing the struggle that she went through, and it's really hard to watch at points. We see Marcia's divorce, then shows her that Gordon started a petition for primary custody. Literally, he wants primary custody, and he started a petition about it, and she calls him out for it, obviously. Gordon said it's only temporary until the trial's over. She says she couldn't be penalized for doing her job, and Gordon says that the kids shouldn't be, and she says she's more than a great mother to them. He knows that, and he said it, and he says he has when she's there. Right now, they spend all their times with babysitters, and it is no way in their best interest. And I understand his point here, like, she's working long hours, things like that, but she does care about her kids, and she does try to make time for them. She just doesn't because she's very busy with what she's doing, and he doesn't understand how hard at work she is. And she says she has to work so hard because she has a family to support. She walks away with her lawyer, and I knew that Gordon was obviously a douche, but I did not know he was as much as a dick as he was in this episode. I mean, Gordon not only is trying to pin all the blame on her and trying to make it seem like she's the reason for all this to happen, but in return, he's going to make sure he gets what he wants, and he's going to do whatever he can to get it, clearly. And it's kind of like what's going on with Cochran, how Cochran is kind of changing. His character definitely is changing. I mean, the beginning of this show, Cochran obviously dealt with a lot of things. Like, he's dealt with police, things like that. Like, we understand that. But Cochran has grown very cold, and I think very bitter, not very bitter, but very cold, very manipulative, and overall very selfish, and you definitely see it in this episode. And especially since the beginning of the season, you kind of saw Cochran as a good guy who's just trying to do the right thing, and now you see him as someone that is, started up this lie that's not true, wants to build on it to basically get revenge on the police, and you can definitely see why in the end, Simpson's gonna end up not guilty, which you guys know that. I mean, I'm sure if you watch the show, you know that it's not a spoiler. Cochran is with Carl and Sean, tells Carl to look at Sean's note cards, but they're about police disciplinary actions based on race that fit their narrative. And Shapiro then shows up late, and Cochran goes on to say he just wanted to impress upon everyone that the most important thing is the story. And right now, Marcia's got the ball and telling the story, but instead of responding to her story, they need to be telling a more credible one and gather the jury around a fire and tell a better story. Even if it's not the real story, they need to make it sound like it's true. They need to make it sound like the better story, and that's really what the jury wants to hear. They want to hear a good story. They just don't they don't want to hear the truth because that bores them. They want to hear something that's good. And I feel like that pertains to everyone. We don't want to hear the truth. You want to hear something made up because it just sounds more interesting. Kind of like this show. The show is factual, but it also will stretch some things out to make the show more interesting. I mean, if the entire show was just a bunch of court cases, the show I think would be interesting, but it wouldn't be as great as it is when it does episodes like this where it really focuses on characters. He says they need to make them believe. He asked for a folder, the one with the Three Stooges, referring to the police in the very first scene we ever saw on the show, and we really do get back to that in this episode, which I like that we are focusing on that, because like I said, eventually it would come back into play. And of course, these are the Three Stooges of Rockingham that night, and asks if they remember the story because he doesn't remember a thing about it. And back in court, Marcia asks Van Adder what they did next at Rockingham. Van Adder explains how it played out, and Marcia thanks him. Cochran then asks him if it's a regular procedure for three detectives to rush from a crime scene to a former spouse of the victim simply to notify the person that someone they used to be married to has been killed. And Van Adder says that every situation is different, that there were children involved, and that's why. And of course, we know why they did this. We knew why they had to do this, but Cochran really makes Van Adder seem like he's at fault here, and he's clearly trying to turn Van Adder against everyone, which is very interesting. And basically, Van Adder says that every situation is different, and Cochran then asks if at the Bundy scene, did Fuhrman inform him that Simpson and the victim had a history of domestic violence, and Van Adder says that that's right. Cochran says they proceeded to Rockingham because Simpson became a suspect, and not just an ex-husband to inform, and that's why, that they basically thought that Simpson was a suspect, and they weren't just going to notify him, they wanted to make sure that he was a suspect, and Van Adder says that that is not why they were there at all. And Marcia and Darden go to leave the courtroom. Marcia asks if it's normal for so many of them to go for a notification, and Darden says he has no idea, he's never heard of something like that, and she says it made the detective sound shady. Sean says that she doesn't know if the jury's on their side, and Cochran says that that's not today. Today, they will make them think the cops lie about little things so that tomorrow they can show them they lie about big things. And it's clear they're trying to turn the cops against the jury so that way they can make it seem like the cops have falsely accused Simpson, which, whether it be true or not, is exactly what Cochran wants to happen. He wants the, cops to get revenge for what happened with the whole Rodney King incident. And also, if you remember the Taylor family that Cochran had to deal with in the first episode here. So basically, he says that if they think Simpson did it, that's fine for now, and then we'll get to it later. Right now he's not concerned about that. The main goal now is to turn the jury against the cops, not if they think Simpson did or not. He's not concerned with that. He's concerned about making the cops look as shady as possible. So Lang is with Cochran and reminisce about another guy named Tom that they knew was a sergeant, and Cochran says he hasn't heard from him in years and he never hears from him anymore. And this is a very interesting scene because Cochran literally just said he's going to turn against these three police agents, but to them, when he sees them, he acts like they're his best friends or everything. And it's clear that he really is being very shady, and they don't really know what they're up against, which is really sad, honestly. I do feel bad for them. So basically, they then head to court, and Cochran asks Lang if he booked Simpson's shoes into evidence when he took them. Lang says he couldn't have that night, and Cochran asks what he did with them and where they were until he booked them into evidence the next day. And Lang says he put them into the trunk of his car, took them home with him, and Cochran asks where he lives. Lang says Simi Valley, which Cochran is the home of the officers involved in the Rodney King beating, and asks how long were Simpson's shoes in his home. And obviously, you can tell why Cochran is so upset that they were in Simi Valley, because this is where the Rodney King beating took place, and that very much upset Cochran, as we know. And Lang says it was 6 hours, and basically Shapiro goes to the stand, asks Lang how long he's been in the LAPD. Lang says 28 years, total 18 as detective, and Shapiro points out something that he's confused about, that, basically he says, ask how many times he's taken evidence with him to his home overnight, and Lang says it's difficult to say. Shapiro asks if he did it before, and Lang says he hasn't before, and Shapiro says to make sure of what he's saying, and Lang admits that this was the only time he didn't book it till the next day, even though he hasn't before. He did it this time. It was just an error. And then we get a very interesting scene. We get two very interesting scenes with daytime TV executives, which don't seem like a huge deal, but they are very important because this did actually happen. We see a daytime TV executive team. They agree to preempt all TV with coverage of Simpson's trial because it's just more interesting. They don't want to show soap operas. They want to show coverage because that's what everyone's talking about and that's what people want to see. They don't just want to see, some soap opera. They want to see actual footage, and they realized that, and I thought that was definitely very interesting here. And again, it didn't seem like a huge thing, but it is. And Darden and Marcia then drink. Marcia says the good thing is that Fuhrman doesn't live there, and he says he thinks that they're looking forward to Fuhrman, and Marcia says they shouldn't be. He's far from perfect human being, but his procedure that night was near perfect, and he can describe events in question 3 times in a row without missing a note, and he'll come off great. Remember, Marcia's the one that's going to question him. It's not Darden because he didn't want to, remember, because the whole thing had happened with Cochran, she decided to do it, and she tells him he needs to be confident in the strength of what they have, and Darden tells her that she needs a study break. He turns on some music, starts dancing to it, and it's a fun scene, especially in a show that doesn't get to have a lot of fun scenes in a heavily dramatic show like this. I like that they try to do something fun here. He tries to get her out of the mood. She tells him she can't afford to be accused of having a good time. He asks who's going to begrudge her for having a good time, and she says everyone will, including Gordon, and Darden tells her he has a daughter, and this is very interesting. It's Darden tells her that she has a daughter, and she's 15, really beautiful, lives up in Oakland, and he wishes that he was around more than he was since he had to move down there for his big job. And he says as he gets older, he's starting to have more regrets and see things more clearly. And Marcia says that's what happens, that is supposed to happen. He's trying to fix things, and now that he's on TV, he's the cool dad. A song comes on that Marcia likes. Darden asks her to dance to distract her, and they dance. It's a cute scene. I like seeing these two together, but like I said, they keep it strictly platonic because, one, I don't think Marcia wants a relationship right now. It's clear she doesn't. Two, we don't need to see these two date. We really don't. We need to focus on it as a platonic relationship, and I like that we focused on it that way. So Darden hears a radio station taking a poll on if Marcia's a bitch or a babe, calls in and says he votes babe, and obviously he's very upset, but you can tell he kind of has a bit of a crush on Marcia, which I like. I think it's cute. I mean, Marcia, I think, just sees him as someone she works with and her friend, but he clearly sees her as more. You definitely see that, especially in this episode. You can definitely tell that I think, his attraction for her is not just colleague and friend. It definitely, I think he's starting to be attracted to her. So, and it's a very subtle way they did. Marcia comes in, Darden starts singing the song that they were dancing to. Marcia says that she's been prepped and that night only got 2 hours of sleep, but she can tell him every single thing that's going to happen in court, and she's right for anything. And we don't know if she's right for anything because I don't think she really is. She doesn't know what's actually going to happen. And what happens in court, she definitely is not ready for. Marcia says it will now call Fuhrman to the stand, and Cochran asks the counsel to approach the bench because they have an incredibly urgent matter to discuss. He literally cuts her off. Like, he doesn't care that Marcia wants to defend Fuhrman. He's there to basically tell her that Rosa Lopez has left the state and they need to hear her testimony out of order because she's here, but they can't compel her to stay. And Marcia says she's in the middle of presenting the people's case. That's how it works. They make a case, defense responds, and he doesn't get to override that. Even though he wants to, he doesn't get to do that. And that's the thing with Cochran. Cochran thinks he's a lot more powerful than he is, when in reality, there are a lot of things he just can't do, and he's clearly violating, what he can and can't do. And Ito doesn't seem concerned with that. Like, when someone else does something wrong, he might call them out, but with this, he doesn't seem to be concerned. And Marcia says they're just trying to kill momentum, and Lance and Ito says they need a hearing to establish, and he dismisses the jury for the day so they can do that. Ito says it will be going late tonight. Marcia says she can't because she has to take care of her kids, and Cochran asks if they're really going to risk losing a witness because of a babysitting problem, and Ito says he just dismissed the jury, doesn't have the power to have his courtroom open late if need be, and it's a crazy scene because, she can't stay late because of her kids. It's a genuine situation, but, Cochran just sees an excuse because, one, he doesn't have kids, and two, he doesn't really, want to deal with this, and he wants to win, and he's going to basically go against anything she says, and he does have the power to have his courtroom open late if need be. He agrees to recess until tomorrow and for Cochran to make sure that Lopez is there. Gil then says the hearing makes them seem unprepared, and Marcia says that they couldn't be prepared for Lopez since they weren't expecting to cross-examine her for another 5 months, which, yeah, they weren't expecting to do all that, so I don't blame, Marcia for that. That's not her fault. Gil asks who she is, and Marcia says she's the housekeeper and a neighbor and saw the Bronco outside Simpson's house at 10:15. Gil asks what that does to her timeline, and she says she will handle it. Gil says it seems she's losing control, and Marcia says that Ito is the one he's a media whore who will go on any talk show and talk about his side of things, and Gil says that's out of her control. And for the first time, you kind of see Gil's kind of, telling her, look, don't watch TV, you don't want to hear all this stuff about you, don't watch TV, and it's just not a good idea. And if she, she will start if she's listening to all that noise, she's going to bring it into the courtroom and to not let that stuff affect her. But he does tell her that he understands that things are really bad, and that, even when he watches TV, he thinks it's disgusting, raw, and sexist, and horrifying, but he can't really do anything. He gives her some options, but he realizes that he can't really do anything here. It's an interesting scene because Gil has all this power, but he can't tell the TV what to say and what not to say. He can't really do anything about that. So basically, he's realizing that even though Marcia's getting all these, causing all these problems, there's really no way for her to avoid them. Even though he wishes there were, there's really not, unfortunately. So Marcia's on the phone with Travis, and he tells her that she can't come home yet, and to work things out with his brother because he's hiding the TV. She then and it's a good scene. Again, you see that she really cares about her kids, but she then calls Gordon, asks him for a favor to watch the kids, and he agrees. Court resumes. Cochran assures Ito that Lopez is present. Ito asks if he can anticipate that we'll get to hear what she has to say in one day, and Cochran says he would assume so, barring any acts of God or child care crises from Marcia, and Marcia just finally freaks out, and honestly, she had a right to do that. What Cochran said was not only disrespectful, I mean, she basically says everything that's, wrong here, with what he said, and she says that she is offended by Cochran's remarks as a woman and as a mother, and Cochran may not know what it's like to work a 70-hour work week and also take care of a family, but she does, and many other people do as well. She says to belittle her child care issues in court is completely out of line, and he had no business doing that, honestly. But I understand that Cochran really wants to win, but there are certain things you can and can't do, and getting involved in someone's personal life is the one thing you should never do in court. I mean, they should just stay as lawyers, but it's clear that Cochran wants power, and that's really affecting him, and it's really ruining a lot of things, definitely, and it's really ruining how people perceive him as well in this episode, you can tell. So Lopez is called to the stand. Marcia goes over and asks if she's the housekeeper of Cato, and we get some very shady answers from Lopez. Basically, the fact that she was supposed to pay make a reservation, and she's saying that she made one, and then she's saying that she didn't make one till now, but Marcia says that she has evidence that she applied for a job and in the state, which means she's not leaving. Then she's saying that she saw the Bronco at 10, and now she's saying 10:15. So it's very shady. You can tell that Simpson does not want her there, and Marcia doesn't really know how to handle this sort of thing, which I don't really know how you handle that. I mean, someone like Lopez, she's giving very shady answers, and she's basically just saying like exactly what Cochran told her to say. I wouldn't be surprised if Cochran just told her, say what I tell you to say, and that's how it is. Basically he told her what to say, and after the trial, Marcia is praised for what happened. I'm very happy that she was, and people are actually happy what Marcia did, obviously, because of what she said, and she says that, basically about her taking down Cochran, and Cochran is asked to be interviewed about his history with domestic abuse in his past, which kind of comes out of nowhere, but he immediately shuts it down. He doesn't want to talk about it, and we start to get into this idea that Cochran might have abused his former spouses, which is very interesting, and I think it's a very interesting situation we got to there. Darden and Marcia then watch Gordon giving a press conference, literally giving a press conference about Marcia needing to leave court early because of her kids, which he claims is a lie, and he's saying that this is all her fault. He's blaming it all on her, and the fact he's actually doing a press conference, it's immature. It's immature, it's wrong, and it just defies any privacy from Marcia. You can tell she's really not getting any privacy, and that I think that's something this episode showed very well. Cochran then calls his ex-wife Barbara, tells her the LA Times reached out to him today about them, and he needs to discuss it with her as they may be calling. Barbara says they've called, and she says she discussed it with them after she got her recollections together. He says he sold the apartment building on South Vermont last month, and even though he got in the divorce, it occurred to him that maybe she should get the profit, considering it was her pet project, and it's a lot of profit that could make her quite uncomfortable. And even though he doesn't really want to discuss this, I think Cochran is realizing that he can't really get away out of this. Like, his personal life is going to interfere with how it is in the court. That's just how it is. So Simpson's then freaking out what's going on in the courtroom, understandably, especially with the way things were handled with Lopez, and basically he says he won't be out of jail by next Wednesday. Lopez was completely avoidable on the football, and he talks about on the football field, when he sees an absent performance, he deals with it harshly and directly because he's for real, and when he sees an absence like a lack of leadership, he leads and asks if that's what he's going to have to do. He says he needs to know in advance what they're doing, and it's clear that Marcia was dominating the courtroom. I mean, even though Cochran is as powerful as he is, Marcia was the one that did anything, and they didn't do anything really. They didn't try to stop her, and that's what Simpson's really saying, that they didn't really do anything. He even wants to get involved involved, and they're telling him that he can't do that, and basically he says that anytime, now he wants to know in advance what they're doing, wants to know so he can weigh on it, and Shapiro tries to give him advice, but Simpson's not in the mood, and you see in this episode that Shapiro's really outnumbered. Like, no one's really listening to Shapiro at this point, even though he wants them to. No one seems to be listening, and I think that's very interesting. So Marcia then goes to a hairdresser to change her hair and make it softer, and even though I don't think this was something that Marcia wanted to do, I think she knows she has to do this. She's getting targeted by it. She's tired of hearing about it, so she's going to change her hair. So Darden then berates a journalist for showcasing Simpson and Cochran, but not him, and that Simpson doesn't even respect black people, and I agree with Darden for this. I mean, he has a right to be upset. He's not being targeted, and he's not being showcased here, and he is one of the, he is the lawyer on this case. He's one of the prosecutors, and they need to recognize him. They're not giving him the recognition he deserves, and they're only recognizing Cochran and Simpson because they're the ones that people want to hear about, and that's really what it is. No one knows who Darden is, but everyone knows who Cochran and Simpson are, and that's why they want to hear about them, and that's what's making Darden so upset, which I understand why he's really upset, but again, there's really nothing he can do about it, unfortunately. So Marcia walks in with a new hairstyle. Everyone is shocked about it. They can't believe, that she changed her hair and everything. She walks in the courtroom. Darden writes to her that he loves it. And it's again a good scene. But then Marcia's in a grocery store. She sees newspaper articles insulting her hairstyle, and the checker sees that she has tampons. He jokingly says that it's going to be a hard week for her, but you can tell this is really getting to her because, again, it's just people making fun of her, and she doesn't find it funny. She finds it actually very offensive, and, she hasn't really dealt with something like this before, and I like seeing that. And Fuhrman then finally we see arrives to take the stand, and here we go. This is where Marcia is finally questioning Fuhrman. Marcia asks Fuhrman how he feels about testifying. He says he's a little nerved because of the attention away from the evidence and the facts into more personal issues, and Marcia says she couldn't agree more. And in very much the same way, Marcia and Fuhrman are going through the same situation. I mean, Fuhrman is being targeted for things that he said in his personal life, and Marcia is being targeted for her physical appearance, for things that she said, the way she carries herself, just everything, and Fuhrman's going through pretty much the same exact situation. The difference is that Fuhrman isn't as involved in this as Marcia is, and of course, Fuhrman has genuine reasons to be targeted. Well, they're just targeting Marcia because they want to create a dialogue. That's really what's going on there. So he asks when he first saw what he first saw at Bunny, and he goes over what he saw at the crime scene. We're reminded what happened in the first episode, which I like because it's been a while, so I like that we were reminded of that. When he brings up Kato, some guys talk about how they should bring Kato back, which we haven't seen Kato in a while. I'm sure we're going to see him again before the season's over. We see Lee, Sean, Carl, and Cochran are at lunch, and Lee points out that his lunch is Fuhrman's tombstone. He'll be dead and buried before he even knows what hit him. Sean asks what he's talking about, and Lee says he's going to ask him point blank if he ever used the N-word, and if he denies it, the jury will call bullshit and deny him, and if he denies it, it's even worse. So basically, if he says no, they're going to take it as, yeah, he's just, trying to hide it. And that could be possible because we know in the last episode, he does have that Nazi stuff, which, again, Nazis were very against black people, so I'm pretty sure that, anything that Fuhrman says is a lie. So Cochran says it's a good idea. Lee says it's the most powerful word in the English language, and he's going to impale him on it. Marcia then asks him about the glove he found. He describes how it was evidence. Lee then goes to the stand and asks him, as an MP in the Marine Corps, what was his responsibilities. Fuhrman says they were varied. Lee says it was a lot of arresting, drunk, and disorderly. Asks if he took a glove from the interior of the Bronco. Fuhrman says he didn't. Lee asks if he could fit it into a plastic bag, put into a sock, and then place it in Simpson's home so we could find it. And Fuhrman says he would never do that. Marcia says it's not the glove from the case. It's a different size and a different make, and is just a fancy one by the defense for which there is no factual or logical basis, and it's as dishonest as any of Lee's tactics have been, and that, it's not the glove, that they're faking it, and that it's just fake. And Lee asks if she's accusing him of lying, and she says he can't get away with it in this case. There are too many people watching. And Ito asks if they can see the gloves, and Ito says a small size, so it must be Lee's. Lee calls around it, says there's no way it is, and asks Fuhrman straight out if he uses the N-word. And the way this was done, I love. Just the way it cut from Lee to Fuhrman, the close-up shots. I mean, you really saw how much this was affecting Fuhrman. This is the one thing he doesn't want to be asked about, and Fuhrman says he doesn't. Lee asks if he ever did. Fuhrman denies he didn't, and you can see he's really upset, definitely. He doesn't want to have to deal with this, and he just has to keep saying no, and we don't know if he's telling the truth, but I think it's really just Fuhrman's way of just dismissing it entirely because he doesn't want to be called out on it. Despite the fact of whether Fuhrman's doing right or wrong, they shouldn't be really getting involved in his personal life, and they are, and that's something that's really, bothering Fuhrman, which I don't blame him for. So Gil calls Marcia into his office, tells her to close the door. She thinks that that he's going to talk about Fuhrman and everything that happened down there, but that's not what it's about. It's about something that's much more pressing and probably the saddest thing that happens to Marcia in this episode. I mean, she's already hit rock bottom. You can tell she's already hit rock bottom. She's already really upset about what this job entails. She understands she has to deal with it, but she is just going through a lot. And this is probably the one thing that she never wanted to go through. He asked her if she's seen a picture of her on a beach naked. She admits it's real. It's her ex-husband. They were on vacation, and Gil asks if Gordon did, and she says she had a husband before Gordon. And Gil thinks of things to do, and again realizes he can't really do anything. It's just a sad scene. There are two scenes where where Gil's trying to figure out if he can do something, and there's really nothing he can do here, which is sad. So basically, she says she's due downstairs. She leaves, and Gil slams the magazine on the table. Obviously, he's really upset. She goes back to the courtroom and cries, and Ito says that they will recess, and again, he keeps saying that in this episode. Darden then knocks on the door to find Marcia crying. She says she's not, and we finally see why Marcia's really upset. It has nothing to do with her being targeted. It's the fact that she's not a public personality. This isn't what she does. She doesn't know how to do this. She's never been on live TV before. She dealt with court cases before. She dealt with things like that. But she hasn't really done anything like this. She hasn't been constantly targeted by the media. She hasn't been constantly coveraged on news, and she just doesn't know what to do about it. And it's very much the same situation with Gil. Gil's never been in this position. He doesn't know how he's going to handle this, and the other guys are hotshots. They're used to it, but she just can't take it. He tells her that she'll do fine. He knows it. Admits she does look good in the pictures of her as he comforts her, and that's how the episode ends. And what a beautiful episode. Honestly, this episode really was beautiful. As sad as it really was a very sweet episode, showing the relationship between Darden and Marcia, showing that no matter what happens, Darden's going to stick by her. And I think Marcia's realizing that she's just going to have to deal with it. I think she knows that even though things are so bad for her and people are, personifying her as things and accusing her of things and just making her seem like this terrible person, she's going to have to deal with it. And that's very much how it is in any celebrity. A lot of celebrities, there's gossip, there's stories about them that just aren't true, and that's exactly what Cochran and his team are doing. What they're doing is complete gossip. It's completely something that like TMZ would do, and it's not at all the professional way to do this. They're acting like complete children. They just want to win, and that's all it's really about. And whether or not you think that's wrong, it is wrong what they're doing. There's really no question to it. It's definitely wrong what they're doing, and you can see the effect it's having on Marcia, which I thought was very interesting, and I really did like seeing. And I can't wait to see how things turn out between Marcia and Darden. Like I said, I do think Darden has feelings for her, but they're trying to keep platonic, and I hope they do. I don't want them to be in a relationship. I don't think Marcia wants to be in a relationship, and I think that Darden knows that as well. Like, it's just going to be too much pressure for her if he tries, and that's one of the reasons why they can't really be in a relationship right now. What is Cochran going to do about the situation with the abusers? Now, I already watched some of episode 7, so I already know what he does, but, let's pretend I haven't. I don't really know what's going to happen here. So, with the abusers, I don't know really what Cochran's going to do with this, if he's going to try to shut it down, or if he's going to try to start something up. I don't really know. Knowing Cochran and the media circus, I mean, maybe he will try to fit this into the case somewhere. I don't really know. It's very interesting what's going to happen there. We'll have to see what happens with that. Like I said, I don't think we're going to see Fuhrman again. I think this is the only time we've seen him, because now he's of no use to them, really. He stated what they did, and now that he's stated, there's really nothing more he can do. So I like the way it was done, though. I like that we went back in the first episode, remembered how things were, and I like seeing that. Definitely, that was very good stuff. I definitely enjoyed that. Simpson getting involved. I mean, I feel like Simpson really does want to help him, and you definitely really do see that. But also, like I said, Shapiro's starting to be outnumbered. Like, no one seems to be listening to him. No one seems to be taking his advice, and it's very interesting. I can't wait to see where that goes as well, because Shapiro really does want to be in power, but he constantly is being overthrown by either Cochran or Simpson or someone. Everyone else is just so much more powerful than him, and that's the thing with him, and I think it's very interesting. And also, I love the way the show's portraying the media. Like I said, they don't care about people like Darden and Shapiro. They don't care about those, they don't care about Darden or anyone, especially Darden. They don't care about him because he's not famous. He hasn't dealt with these things before, and he's not, he doesn't have the popularity that Cochran and Simpson do, and that's who everyone wants to hear about. They don't want to hear about Darden, and that's the thing that really upsets Darden. But overall, guys, I know you guys saw this episode. Like I said, I think this was just as strong as episode 5. I still think episode 5 was the best episode of this season. Don't get me wrong. I think episode 6 was an amazing episode, and Sarah Paulson surely acted the hell of it. I mean, she was incredible here. Also, what's gonna happen with Marcia and her kids? I hope we do get an update on that because I really do feel bad for her, and I hope that Gordon's whole petition does not go through, that people do not listen to him and they side with Marcia, which I don't really know what's gonna happen there. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Like I said, absolutely love this episode, amazing stuff, right up there with episode 5. Definitely really loved it, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for episode 7 of American Crime Story, People vs. O.J Simpson, and we'll see you guys for that. Winding down here, guys, we only got 4 episodes left, which I can't believe that we only have 4 episodes left, but really winding down. We're going to the end, and I can't wait to see how things turn out. And we'll see you guys next video, which will be for that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.